Theseus and the Minotaur. The mighty Minotaur. Prince Theseus was greatly loved by his father, King Aegeus. Theseus, however, was much too brave and active a young man to spend all his time talking about the past with his father. His ambition was to perform other, more heroic acts. One morning, Prince Theseus awoke to sobs and screams of woe from the king's palace, from the streets, and from the temples. He put on his clothes as quickly as he could to find out what it all meant. "Alas," said King Aegeus, "this is the saddest anniversary of the year. It is the day when we randomly select 7 youths and maidens of Athens to go be eaten by the dreadful Minotaur." "The Minotaur!" exclaimed Prince Theseus. "What kind of monster is that? Is it not possible to slay him?" But King Aegeus shook his head and explained that on the island of Crete there lived a dreadful monster called a Minotaur, shaped partly like a man and partly like a bull. A few years before, there had been a war between the city of Athens and the island of Crete, in which the Athenians were beaten. They could only beg for peace if they agreed that every year 7 young men and 7 maidens could be eaten by the pet monster of the cruel King Minos. When Theseus heard the story, he said, "Let the people of Athens this year draw lots for only 6 young men instead of 7. I will myself be the 7th. Let the Minotaur destroy me if he can." The journey to Crete. As Prince Theseus was going on board the ship to Crete, his father said, "My beloved son, notice the ship's sails are black because you are going on a voyage of sorrow and despair. I do not know whether I can survive until you return, but as long as I do live, I shall climb daily to the top of the cliff to watch for the sails of this ship returning. And if by some happy chance you should escape the jaws of the Minotaur, then tear down the black sails and put up white sails instead. When I see the white sails, I and all the people will know that you are coming back victorious." Theseus promised that he would do so. Then he set sail and eventually arrived at King Minos's kingdom. When King Minos saw Theseus, he asked in a stern voice, "Young man, are you not appalled at being devoured by this terrible Minotaur?" "I have offered my life for a good reason," answered Theseus, "and therefore I give it freely and gladly. But, King Minos, aren't you appalled to do something so terrible and wrong? You are a more hideous monster than the Minotaur himself." "Aha! Do you think me so?" cried the king, laughing in his cruel way. "Tomorrow you shall have an opportunity of judging which is the greater monster, the Minotaur or the king." A heroic deed. Near the king's throne stood his daughter, Ariadne. She begged her father to set the prisoners free. "Peace, foolish girl," answered King Minos. The prisoners were led away to a dungeon. The 7 maidens and 6 young men soon sobbed themselves to slumber. But Theseus felt responsible for all of them and stayed awake to think of a way to save them all. Just before midnight, the gentle Ariadne showed herself. "Are you awake, Prince Theseus?" she whispered. She invited him to follow her. Ariadne led him from the prison into the moonlight. She told him he could sail away to Athens. "No," answered the young man. "I will never leave Crete unless I can slay the Minotaur and save my poor companions." "I knew you would say that," said Ariadne. "Come with me. Here is your own sword. You will need it." She led Theseus to a dark grove. Ariadne pressed her finger against a block of marble in a wall, revealing an entrance just wide enough to let them in. She said, "In the center of this labyrinth is the Minotaur, and you must go in to find him." They heard a roar like a fierce bull, yet it had a sort of human voice. "That is the Minotaur's noise," whispered Ariadne. "Follow that sound through the labyrinth and you will find him. Take the end of this silken string. I will hold the other end. If you win the victory, it will lead you again to this spot." So he took the end of the string in his left hand and his sword in the other and walked boldly into the labyrinth. Finally, at the center of the labyrinth, he saw the hideous creature. What an ugly monster it was! Only his horned head belonged to a bull, and yet somehow he looked like a bull all over. Theseus hated him, but also felt pity. The monster let out a roar, and Theseus understood that the Minotaur was miserable. It strengthened his heart to feel a twitch at the silken cord, which he was still holding in his left hand. It was as if Ariadne were giving him all her courage. When the Minotaur saw Theseus, it instantly lowered his sharp horns, exactly like a mad bull. They began an awful fight. The Minotaur ran at Theseus, grazed his left side with his horn, and flung him down. The Minotaur thought he was victorious, but Theseus leaped up and caught the monster off guard. He cut his bull head off of his human body, which fell down flat upon the ground. Eager to let Ariadne know of his success, he followed the thread back to the entrance of the labyrinth. "You have slain the monster!" cried Ariadne, clasping her hands. "Thanks to you, dear Ariadne," answered Theseus. "I return victorious." Homeward bound. "Then," said Ariadne, "we must get your companions onto the ship to leave before dawn. If you are still here in the morning, my father will avenge the Minotaur." Prince Theseus asked Ariadne to come with him, but the maiden said no. "My father is old and has nobody but myself to love him." So he said farewell to Ariadne and set sail with the others. You will recall that Theseus's father, King Aegeus, had said to use white sails instead of black ones, if Theseus were to return victorious. In the exuberance of his success, however, he forgot to alter the sails from black to white. Each day, poor King Aegeus had climbed to the top of a cliff and sat watching for Prince Theseus. As soon as he saw the black sails, he thought that his dear son had been devoured by the Minotaur. He could not bear the thought of living any longer, so he leaned forward and fell headlong over the cliff and drowned in the ocean. This was melancholy news for Prince Theseus, who, when he stepped ashore, found himself king of all of the country. However, he sent for his dear mother, and by taking her advice, he became a very excellent king, who was greatly beloved by his people.